colleagues are here. So the Tualatin, or I will now call to order the THPRD Board of Directors meeting for January 13th, 2021. Jessica, will you please call roll?
Ashley Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Here.
Tia Ping.
Here.
Heidi Edwards.
Here.
Wendy Kroger.
Here.
Felicita Monteblanco.
Here.
Thank you so much, Jessica. We have no action items resulting from executive session. So our first agenda item this evening is a presentation by Eileen Kravitz, our Executive Director of the THPRD Foundation.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Eileen Kravitz. I'm the Executive Director of the Tualatin Hills Park Foundation. As you can see from the slide, we're a 501c3. So we are not part of THPRD, but we are associated with THPRD. We were established in 1958, and I started there in September of 2019, so about a year and a half. We have 15 board members, and one of those board members, Heidi, is our liaison from the THPRD board. So I'd really like to thank Heidi for all of her help and assistance with what we do. I'd like to talk just a minute about our crown jewel that we have accomplished. So if we could go to the next slide. Our board of directors in 2008 solicited funds to enhance the Mountain View Champions Park. So, of course, the park was created through a bond measure, and many community partners, the school district and the park district, and the county, many other leaders worked to create the park. But what we did was enhance the park. So to make it all-inclusive for those experiencing disability. So that means that all the playground equipment, one of the fields, are dedicated to inclusiveness and for those who, for whatever reason, have a need for that. And it also includes an area, a sensory area, and some community gardens. It's an amazing park if you haven't seen it. Our board worked with many community leaders that I don't have time to thank now, but certainly it was a community effort. And really, it was the community and our foundation that made this dream come true. Next slide, please. So what are we doing today? Well, one of the reasons that I was hired is Access for All, which is an initiative that the district started and that the foundation is behind and working with to make parks all inclusive. So equity and diversity are key drivers of this initiative. The idea is to promote stronger, more integrated community through inclusion. And we work with businesses and private donors to create funds to fund this initiative. So the funds that are solicited for this purpose, 50% go to financial aid, 41% go to cultural programming, and just a small percentage go to administrative fees. We are definitely working. It's been during COVID a little bit more challenging, but we are certainly working with the district to try to be more inclusive and to push this initiative wherever we can. Next slide, please. So just recently, within the last few months, what is the purpose of our foundation? Well, it's to assist the district with things that they are either having difficulty funding or would be sort of dream projects that they are not able to fully fund. And one of those that during COVID, they have pivoted tremendously, and I really admire how the district leadership has done this, pivoted to expand programming through mobile recreation. And that encompasses a lot of different programs. But we were able to fund $116,000, which will go to increase mobile recreation programming starting in the spring of 2021. Next slide. But most recently, the foundation raised over $1,600 for holiday kits for youth. So the district has done, again, an amazing job of creating these kits for kids. And we were able to fund many kits that would otherwise not be funded. Next slide, please. So where do we get our money from? Well, we work with businesses, as I said, and community leaders, but our main source of operating fund comes from our Legacy Circle. So these are pledges from individuals that give gifts of $1,200 or more, and these are gifts of a 3-year term. And these gifts are really what has allowed us to flourish and provide support to the district. And so, of course, we're always looking to increase our Legacy Circle members, but if that is not something that you are able to do, we certainly always take donations, and you can go to our website, www.thpf.org, and you can donate. There is a donate section, and you can donate, anywhere from $10 to, of course, a Legacy Circle pledge. So I want to thank the district for allowing me to talk just for a few minutes about what we do and how we support the district. And I welcome anyone who wants to be a volunteer or to be a donor to contact me or go to our website and get more information. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Eileen. Heidi.
Yes, thank you, Eileen, for your 1.5 years of hard work. Especially, we know that as we've gone through this past year with COVID, fundraising is a really tough thing to do, especially in light of what our focus is. It's not the focus of a lot of folks who are giving right now. And so we really want to be able to amplify the voice, so to speak, of the Park Foundation to keep these funds moving through the foundation and then for the district to benefit. So thank you for your work with the holiday giving. I'm going to just reiterate the importance of the Legacy Circle. There are a couple of us board members who are Legacy Circle donors. It's something that we continually work on, and if you know of folks who are interested in giving, we definitely want to be able to talk to them, tell them what we're doing as a foundation, and also hear from them as to what would they like to see from us as a foundation also, and what would they like to have through whether it's sponsorship or their annual gift. So Eileen, you've done fabulous work. It's been very challenging in the first 1.5 years of employment, I know, with all these changes, but I want to give you kudos as well and to open it up for other questions.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Felicita?
Thanks for joining us, Eileen. Nice to see you. Happy New Year. Kind of a question, and I want to be super mindful because I understand that there is one of you. So this isn't like, oh, you should do more. I'm just genuinely curious about our outreach to maybe people who aren't at the $1,200 level, but are maybe at like a $600 level. Like, it's hard for me not to like turn off when I see that number. Like, that's not a number that's terribly accessible to me. And like, the average age of a Beaverton resident is 34. We know that the folks that engage in our programming, like, we serve a lot of children, right? So the average age of who we serve is younger too, and may not be able to do that amount. I'm just curious about, and again, I know your capacity is limited, so this isn't like you need to do more, Eileen. I'm just wondering, like, is there an opportunity there, especially considering who we serve and who's in the district?
Well, sure. There's always opportunity, and anyone can donate at any time, like I said. So anyone can go to the website and donate $10 or $100 if that's what they can afford. As you said, I'm a part-time employee, but more than that, it's about enabling us to spend more time doing the work that we need to do instead of doing administrative work. So that's why the 3-year pledges are really helpful, because that's fundraising. We don't, by the time we get the money in and then process it, and then we're having to ask for that money again. So that's really helpful. But I totally see your point. Over the years, that has not been a focus. Lower level giving has not been a focus of the board. However, I think that based on the times that we're in, we might want to look at other fundraising avenues that are, that we could focus on in order to raise funds.
Well, I applaud you, Eileen, for all that you've been able to do, especially during COVID. I really liked the holiday stuff that y'all were doing, and was happy to share that on social media.
Yay, thank you.
But so thank you, Eileen, for being here and keeping us up to date on the great work that you're doing. That really allows us to do our work in even a deeper, more thoughtful way. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Felicita. Wendy?
Hi, Eileen, and thank you so much for being here this evening with us.
I'm so happy to see your lovely face. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a while, so thank you.
Yes.
We had talked briefly sometime back. I mentioned that I'm a member of the Salem Parks Foundation as well. And one of the things they do is they offer people who can donate to their foundation a matching donation to the Oregon Cultural Trust. And that helps some of us a little bit tax-wise. And I just wondered if, when I had asked you about that, you were not familiar, I think, with what they were doing or whether we could do it. I just wondered if you'd had any further information about that.
Well, we have. So thanks for asking. So we became members of the Oregon Cultural Trust subsequently after our conversation, and that has enabled us to do many things. One is to apply for grants that might otherwise not be associated with the trust. So that's been quite helpful. We haven't quite gotten to the matching gift yet, but I will promise you that I will put that on my list and check into that and see where we could be with that. So thanks for bringing that up.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Wendy. Any other questions, comments from my colleagues? Okay, Eileen, thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry we weren't able to get you on the agenda in December, but I hope we are all able to help amplify the fundraising efforts. I know I was on Twitter with your board member, Mike.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, really, really awesome. So thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Also, I'm having Wi-Fi issues and it just kicked me out of here. So if I disappear, Tia, that means you got to take over. Our next agenda item is a public hearing for exempting contracts from requirements of public bidding of ORS 279C.335. So I will now open the public hearing. And tonight our staff report is by Gary Keck and Matt Kilmartin.
All right, well, good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. Can everybody hear me?
You bet.
All right, well, I'm Gary Keck. I'm the Design and Development Manager for the district, and I do have Matt Kilmartin and actually Bruce Barbaresh are in the back there. They'll be able to answer any questions that we may have at the end related to the projects that they're working on. So I'll get into the next slide, please. Tonight, we're here holding this public hearing seeking Board of the Directors approval of the findings within the staff report to exempt the development of 2 public improvement projects from competitive bidding and to utilize the design build approach as an alternative contracting method. This request includes 2 separate projects: the Southwest Quadrant Youth Athletic Field, also referred to as the multi-purpose sport court we're putting in at the Mountain View Champions Park. And the second project is the Raleigh Park Stream Daylighting and Enhancement Project. Next slide, please. In October of 2018, the board approved the use of the Southwest Quadrant Youth Athletic Field project funds to develop a multi-purpose sport court at Mountain View Champions Park. I know most of you have been there, but you can see here in the vicinity map, it's located just south of Farmington Road, just behind the Mountain View Middle School. Next slide, please. The court will be developed in the southeast corner of the park, outlined here in red. The district acquired 2 parcels equaling about 1.74 acres to expand the park just at the end of the development of the larger portion of the park back in 2017. The multi-purpose sport court project is the last public improvement project within the 2008 bond measure for the design and development department to tackle. So we're real excited to get going on this one. Next slide, please. So here are a couple of photos of a multi-purpose sport court that we recently installed at Cedar Hills Park. This example shows you what we anticipate the proposed court to look like there at Mountain View Champions Park. So next slide. Now the second project tonight that we're looking at is the Raleigh Park Stream Daylighting and Enhancement Project that'll be led by the Nature and Trails Department. This park's located on the eastern border of the district, as you can see here outlined in red. It's just south of Canyon Road. Next slide, please. And in 2017, the district went through a community engagement process and developed this concept plan for the 16.3 acre site. The board agreed with the plan that same year, and the plan includes daylighting 500 feet of Hall Creek, which you can see there. That's the blue line that's dashed. That's daylighting. It goes to around the south side of the pool there. It also includes installing in-stream structures to slow erosion, as well as improving water quality and habitat. Next slide, please. And here, this slide shows you on the left there, that's the existing conditions. You're looking east into the park off of 78th Street, and the photo on the right is a simulation of what we envision the stream daylighting to look like when we're done. So you can see it's going to be a nice addition to the park. So next slide, please. The Oregon Public Contracting Code generally requires the award of a construction contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. And that's through a design, bid, build process, but it allows the use of alternative methods like the design build approach that we're discussing tonight. These contracting laws allow the agency's local contract review board, which is you as the board of directors for the park district, to exempt from competition the award of a specific contract and to approve an alternative method of contracting by using a qualitative selection process. And to do so, the public agency needs to demonstrate through findings that the alternative process will not encourage favoritism and it will result in a cost savings to the agency. So next slide, please. So staff have evaluated 2 contracting methods to determine the effort it would take to manage, one being the traditional design, bid, build, and the second is hiring a general contractor to lead a design build contract. And one benefit staff has determined with the design build approach is the potential to produce a shorter schedule and a more cost-effective project. And in this workflow diagrams, you can see the relationship between each entity for each delivery method. And as you can see, the design build process is a little more streamlined and will be easier to manage versus the traditional process for these projects. Next slide, please. Here you see each process and their associated schedules. You can see the design build process will save 5 months on the multi-purpose sport court project and 3 months with the Raleigh Park Stream Daylighting project. And keep in mind, this doesn't include any seasonal delays that the process will create. You can see the design build process helping us save 5 months on the multi-purpose sport court. That's 5 months of float in our mind. And that time is extremely valuable. It could be used for any unforeseen design issues, any unforeseen permitting delays along the way, or it could potentially be used for the contractor to start construction early if they choose to, which we hope they will. You can also see in the parentheses, when the seasonal delay is added to the stream daylighting project, you save 12 months in the schedule with the design build process. And this is due to the project sequencing and the need to construct that project in the summer during dry weather. And these opportunities for these shorter schedules translate to reduced project costs overall. The less time we spend on them, the more money we'll save, and the sooner we can open them to the public too. Next slide, please. Here's how we feel we meet two of the key findings that are stated in the staff report. We believe using the design build alternative method will result in cost savings to the district. The process will reduce scheduling complexity. If these two projects were each to be bid out as a typical design bid build process, a separate competitive procurement and contract would be required for the designer, any of the product manufacturers, as well as the contractor. While using the design build process will allow the district to combine these three separate functions into one procurement and one contract, resulting in less staff time managing the project. And it'll still maintain quality as well. The design build process will also guarantee a maximum price early in the process, thereby reducing the overall long-term project costs, which tend to increase with time due to market fluctuations. And the second finding is to show the alternative method is unlikely to encourage favoritism or diminish competition. And the use of the design build process for the projects is unlikely to encourage any favoritism or diminish competition because a competitive RFP process will be used to solicit the design build team, including being formally advertised. The one difference the design build alternative process has to the traditional process is that it is based on a qualitative analysis on the design build. So we'll be looking at the proposals and we'll be judging them on a preset criteria, and they won't be based solely on low bid. Now, this will allow us to consider the use of minority, women, emerging small business vendors within the selection process, which we do with RFPs. And then given the nature of the work, staff does not expect the use of the design build alternative. It will affect the number of potential contractors willing to bid on the project as well, or propose on the project. Next slide, please. So if the board approves the use of the design build process, staff will then proceed with issuing an RFP for each project. Staff will return to the board shortly after seeking approval to award each contract. And then if approved, we'll complete the projects. Per Oregon contracting law, the post-project evaluation will be submitted to you as the local contracting board within 30 days of completion. And this evaluation will compare the use of the alternative method to the traditional design bid build method and provide an objective assessment of the success or any failures of the alternative contracting method for each project to see how it worked. And I also wanted to mention that the district has, or staff has gone over this with district's council, and they believe that we meet the findings and using the contract process is appropriate. Miller, Nash, Graham, and Dunn actually has a lot of experience using this method, and will be a great resource for staff for sure. Next slide, please. So as stated in the staff report, we are seeking board of directors acting as the local contract review board and in accordance with the state of Oregon competitive bidding to one, approve the findings contained within the final report, or the staff report, sorry. And second, to approve the exemption of the Southwest Quadrant Youth Athletic Field and the Raleigh Park stream projects from requirements of public bidding and to authorize us to use the design build method. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Gary. We did not receive any public comment today, so just wanted to let you know there's nothing for us to read onto the record. So nothing was received by 3 p.m. today. So now I'll hand it over to my colleagues. Tia?
Thank you. So I just had a question. So it sounds like this is probably the first time we're doing this if we're seeking board approval. Is there a reason why all of our other projects that we've done prior have not been done in this manner, if it does save money and still create competitiveness, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a good question. In the design and development department, we did one, gosh, it must have been 10 years ago. It was the air structure there by the admin building. And we don't typically use these. We use the traditional design bid build because a lot of our parks, we go into them not knowing exactly what we want. We go to the public and we do this engagement process, and they help us determine what's going to go in the park. So it's not easy for us to do a design build. I mean, it'd be hard for a contractor to bid on something that they don't know what they're going to install. In these two instances, we know exactly what we want. The money's been designated for certain items, and we can put bookends on an RFP to tell the contractors what we'd like. So that's why we don't use this one that often.
Yeah, and I could add as well to answer the question of do we need to come back? You know, the way the statutes are written, we have to come back for every exemption opportunity. So it's not a case where if we do it once or something we can change internal, that's the way the statute is written.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Doug.
Perfect. And then I don't know if you can tell, but do you know how much we would potentially save by doing it this way? Versus, I know it's hard to gauge because of price influxing and all of that kind of stuff, but
yeah, you know, I don't have a figure for you. I don't know.
Okay, that's okay. Perfect. And then my last question is, there are two separate projects, correct? It's not like we're bidding for one project for both, but there'll be two separate bids for both of the projects.
Correct. Yeah, we felt we could kind of hit them both in this one hearing, but they are two totally separate projects, separate funding. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you, Tia. Felicita.
Hi, Gary. Happy New Year.
Hi.
Nice to see you. I have a bunch of questions and they're kind of all over the place, so I apologize in advance.
Okay.
So one, will you remind me when the Raleigh Park design was approved?
2017 is when the board approved that.
Do you remember what part of the year? I guess I'm just, because I started in 2017, so I'm like, did I approve?
Bruce is on. Bruce, do you know the answer to that? I don't.
You can tell me later. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
I was just curious because it didn't, looking at that design, I was like, it didn't feel familiar. So maybe it's because it was 4 years ago or not even during my time. So thank you.
I believe it was November. This is Matt. I think it was November.
Well, now I'm in trouble. Okay. Thank you. So, okay, next question. So with the Mountain View Sports Court, you said it was within the 2008 bond measure.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing in that bond measure that we promised the voters that would make it so we couldn't do what we're voting on today, I assume?
Correct.
Yeah.
We came to the board in October of 2018 and got approval to use that funding for what we had thought would be a field for a multi-sport court. We did a study back then.
Sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean about the sports court. I meant about like our bidding process for this. Like we're not breaking any rules that we made any promises to.
No, not for the bond.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So then I appreciate you bringing up minority and women-owned businesses because I feel pretty confident saying that is a value of this board body. I just want to flag, apprentice programs and the value of prevailing. My understanding is that since it's public property, anybody that we work with would have to do prevailing wage.
Correct.
Sounds like a great rule that somebody wrote a long time ago. So I guess my last question is really, I'd love to hear a year or so from now, like how this went, what we learned, what we saved. Is this something we want to do in the future? I'll share that I talked to a peer at Beaverton School District today, and I would have sent notes in advance, but it was this morning, so it's been a hectic day, sorry. But I was really glad to talk to them because they have been doing this for longer than we have, and they share that it saves them on costs. It forces the designer and the builder to work together in a different and more effective way. It's more efficient. They talked about how it speeds up the process quite a bit, that for BSD, so many of their buildings are behind in what needs to get done. So it speeds it up in that way. So it's nice to know that we have peers that are doing this that we can learn from as well. So that gave me a lot of comfort. That being said, I would still ask that when this wraps up, that we learn some lessons. So I look forward to seeing you again, Gary.
Yeah, we will. And those are all real valid comments of why you do use design build. So those are good study you found.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Felicita. Wendy?
Thank you. Thanks, Gary. I just had a question, and it's within the document. I think it's on page 5 under 2A, if you want to know where I'm getting this. It says qualitative analysis of proposals judged against a uniform set of criteria. And what came to mind when I read that was, how do you handle in this kind of process, how do you handle the value, for example, of either the natural resources or the trees? How do you calculate that? And the reason I'm asking that is that it happens that in both circumstances, I was asked by a member of the public what we were going to do to protect those trees. So that's why I'm asking how this process can do that sort of thing for the public, so they understand that we are looking at that. I recognize this is a recreational area specifically with regard to Mountain View Champions Park, and we're going to have a sports field there. But there were there was real interest in what are we going to do about the trees. So I present that to you.
Okay. The trees well, I don't know that we're going to be impacting the trees at Mountain View Champions. But at Raleigh, you're right, we're going to be doing some enhancement through there. So the way we would look at doing it is, we provide some specs and some requirements and expectations when they're bidding it, so they know. The local jurisdictions also have a lot of requirements for tree protection. Our requirements are a little more stringent at times because we don't want we don't want contractors laying materials and stuff under trees. Even though they're not working there, it seems to be an easy spot for them to move stuff. So we're on them a lot. So during our field visits, we keep an eye on that stuff as well, Wendy, just so you know. We kind of follow through. We set the criteria, make sure they understand it, and then when they're doing the work, we follow up and do weekly, bi-weekly meetings to make sure they're following through. Bruce, I don't know if you have any concerns with tree protection at Raleigh per se with your project.
Yeah, at Raleigh Park, we don't anticipate removing any native trees. So we're going to be working around existing trees and existing resources that are there. And then we'll, of course, be adding vegetation. So we'll have a net gain no matter what.
Good point.
So this kind of process does not weaken in any way our ability to protect the trees or to enhance the area that we wish to take care of.
It shouldn't.
Correct. Yeah, when we send out the RFP, Wendy, we can be real explicit about that's where we need to say what we expect. That's the right spot to put it. So the RFP would cover it if we had concerns on any site with any topic.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Wendy. Heidi, any questions or comments?
I don't. A couple of my questions have been addressed. So thank you, Gary and Bruce, both for your work with this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well. Yeah, the questions should only be about the public hearing, so I won't ask questions about the projects. So that sounds good to me. I will now close the public hearing, seeing no further questions or comments from my colleagues. Thank you, Gary, Bruce, and Matt. And are there any actions from my colleagues?
Madam President, I have a motion.
Yes, please.
This is Wendy. I move that the Board of Directors, acting as the local contract review board, and in accordance with the State of Oregon competitive bidding requirements and exceptions outlined in ORS 279C.335, approve of the findings contained within the report, and approve the exemption of the Southwest Quadrant Youth Athletic Field and the Raleigh Park Stream Daylighting Public Improvement Projects from the requirements of public bidding and authorize the utilization of design build as an alternative contracting method.
Thank you, Wendy. Is there a second?
This is Tia. I'll second.
Thank you, Tia. And Jessica, will you please take the vote?
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you so much. Our next agenda item is audience time, but I don't believe we received any written testimony for that either outside of the public hearing. So the next item on our agenda is board time. So if any of my colleagues would like to spend a minute or two on updates, please raise your hand. Heidi?
Thank you, Ashley. This will be quick. I was out on leave for much of the prior to our last meeting. Just want to update with respect to Nature and Trails Advisory Committee, a really eager group that is continuing to work and learn about nature and trails. I want to thank Janine. I believe you were there to, we had some questions regarding SDCs and the changes that have been made with SDCs. So thank you for filling our advisory committee in on those changes. And as well, we're continuing our work with the Natural Resources Functional Plan and learning about how to use that and how the team uses it, the staff uses it to make decisions. In addition, some information was shared regarding volunteer and community engagement and volunteer coordination. So very active group. I'm really happy that we've been able to stick with those that we had brought on earlier and have continued with them through this year as well, and look forward to the upcoming joint advisory committee meeting on January 27th, I believe that is. And then you already got a little bit of a taste of the foundation and the work that was done over the holidays regarding holiday fundraising. Just want to keep the foundation on the front burner for us to really make sure that we look for opportunities to continue to put the foundation out there for fundraising opportunities, because it does benefit the district substantially when looking for additional funds, as we have in the recent past. And again, kudos to Eileen and the Board of Trustees for being active. We will be meeting again. We meet quarterly as a foundation, so we'll be meeting again mid-February. And if any folks have feedback or questions, any areas of interest you'd like me to relay to the foundation, I'm happy to. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Any other board updates? Wendy?
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say that I had met briefly, well, it wasn't briefly, but it was kind of fun, actually. I got to meet with Garrett Rosenthal over at Ava's for a very cold cup of coffee for a while, and we got to chat a little bit about what he's hoping to accomplish when he, as he takes reins in his new position at Metro. And I also spent some time with Becky Timchuk on the phone. So I just wanted to report those, that I think we all try very hard to continue to meet with our fellow electeds. And I just wanted to report that I'd done that. Secondly, the pension committee did have a meeting in this last period, and we received a third quarter performance analysis and report. And we also approved recommendations for investment vehicles to utilize for implementing our new policy asset allocation. There was no Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee meeting. That will come up this very soon along with the joint meeting, but the group continues to take a look at reviews of public input for dog parks and dog runs. So I just wanted to report that. And I had two other requests. One is I had asked last time if we might have a short update on the Tualatin Valley Trail community engagement process. So I'm hoping that we can hear something this evening about that. And finally, I wanted on the consent agenda, the item D, which is the SDC Administrative Procedures Guide. I wanted to thank staff very much for adding the definition for affordable housing. So that's my report. So thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Tia?
Sorry, my mute button wasn't unmuting. I have nothing big to report. Programs and events took December off, so we did not meet. We will start again this January. I hope everyone had a great New Year's. We've spent, me and my family, we have 3 kids for people who don't know, but everyone's yearning to stay outside as much as possible, and rain or shine, we get them out there. And I don't think we've been out one time where we still haven't seen other community members enjoying our fields, our trails, our parks, our pickleball, everything. There's always people out. So I just want to congratulate the staff for making sure to keep our parks and trails just accessible, safe, clean. You're doing an amazing job, and our family and the whole community itself is enjoying it and appreciating it so much. So thank you everybody for all your work for keeping things so well maintained.
Thank you, Tia. Felicita?
Madam President, I don't have my hand raised.
Yeah, but I just had to double check and make sure
No,
you didn't have anything to say.
Well, I guess December was quiet, but it's not like I've been doing nothing.
No, that's fine.
But I will share that I, like so many people, were able to get outside during the holidays and love our trails so much. And thanks for all the work that folks are doing there. And then also just highlight the child care conversation that's happening on Friday that I'm encouraging my peers to attend. I think that we, at such a large special district, need to have a voice at that table, at minimum to learn, and at maximum potentially to influence. So thanks.
Thank you, Felicita. And Heidi, just checking if there's anything else or just a lingering hand.
Sorry, just a lingering hand.
It's okay. It's just so nice to see everyone. So good to see you come back on again. So I guess the only thing I kind of wanted to address today is a little bit bigger than us, but I think it's also very personal to us all. It's been a week now since we had an attack on our nation's capital by what I will call homegrown terrorists. Members of our Congress, their staffs, their families, their lives were put at risk in that moment and still to now, as some of them have contracted COVID as a result of the situation. I feel like we've been hearing a lot of calls for unity in response to this attack, and I would just emphasize that I think the unity that we need right now is to unite against racism and to unite against white supremacy. We have a history of this in our country, and I think it's a big part of how we got here today. And so I just want to say today that hate has no place in our country, it has no place in our state, and it especially has no place in our district. And I am so proud to be a part of this organization that makes its values very clear that all are welcome here in this space. So I just wanted to say that tonight. Felicita?
Thank you, Ashley. I really, really, really appreciate that. I think that maybe voters don't know that regardless of your elected position, you take an oath to uphold the Constitution, even at parks. And we take pride in that. And I think that votes that we've made in the past and even votes that we'll make tonight show our commitment to our diverse community. And I want to encourage our patrons to always hold us accountable. We always want to be better. None of everyone's racial equity journey is a journey, and there's stumbling and there's falling. And if folks have the emotional capacity to tell us that we can do better, then please do so. You know, I hope everyone knows how many new elected leaders of color are in Washington County, because there was a time where there weren't many, there was a time where there were none, and now we have more than I can keep track of, which is maybe one of the most exciting statements I've made in years. So, you know, we continue to do good work at our district, and you know, I want to make sure that our patrons understand that we as a board have made this commitment to ourselves as individuals, and as a body. And so, you know, the decisions that we make, we believe in access, we believe in racial equity, we believe in diversity. And I really hope that's clear to patrons. And I'm just trying to say it out loud.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Felista. All right, our next agenda item is the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Yes, this is Tia. I would like to move that the board approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Wendy. I second that.
Thank you, Wendy. Jessica, will you please take the vote?
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer-Prig.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you, Jessica. Our next agenda item is unfinished business. So this agenda item is for us to appoint our budget committee members. I thought it would be nice if we just spent a couple minutes as a group to chat, since some of us weren't there last meeting. I know we have had opportunity to read the minutes and to watch the recordings of all of that, but I just thought it might be a good moment to take to see if there's any discussion or questions or anything before we choose which members, which of our candidates we move forward with. Heidi.
Real briefly, I just want to comment on, first of all, thank everybody who applied to serve on the budget committee. It is, you know, it's a volunteer spot, and it takes time and effort and energy. And I was really pleased to see the diversity of individuals represented within our applicant pool, whether it be related to you know, employment history, personal experience, racial identity. Like, it just was a very diverse, good group to be able to go through. So I want to thank everybody for applying for the budget committee this last year. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Heidi. That's great. Are there any other questions, comments, discussion on the topic? Essentially, yeah, go ahead, Felista.
Well, yeah, I mean, what Heidi said is pretty spot on. You know, we had, I think there were 11 applicants, and they were all wonderful. And I think we should rewrite everything so we can have all 11 of them join us. But we really appreciate their thoughtfulness and their applications. And actually, though, I do want to push back a little bit, because I don't know how diverse and representative the applicant pool was. I still think there's tremendous work we can do there. And that's why my vote tonight will lead with racial equity. I think, well, I know all three of the applicants are amazing. It was funny I didn't know Elizabeth, and I had a similar feeling of when I met Heidi when she interviewed. I'm just like, who's this rock star? So Elizabeth was wonderful, and Anne has clearly done amazing work with the district, and Alfredo super engaged in the community, and brings his lived experience as a person of color, and a dad. So, I mean, I certainly have my votes. I don't know if you want us to share that right now, but I do want to point out that I do think there's still more work to do around the diversity of our applicants, and I put that on all of us. We all have work to do.
Thank you, Felicita. Tia, your hand went down, but just wanted to check if you wanted to chime in.
Oh, no, I echo everything that's been said so far.
Okay. Yeah, and Felicita, thank you for that reminder. I think that we did have a lot of quality experience, right, that came to us. And I do think that as a board, we have made a commitment to racial equity. So my vote will actually be the same, is to make sure that I am living that value through the vote that I put forward tonight. So from our action items, I just have like a motion, right? And we're supposed to put names in there. So I guess before we do that, it would maybe be good to just kind of see if we have a consensus on where we're headed. Or Doug, if you have any advice for us, we'll take it.
Yeah, I think it's, you may want to do just that, is speaking about each one, and you can very briefly, comment on how people felt. And as Felicita noted, that what 2 of 3 each individual is comfortable with before someone makes a motion.
Okay, that sounds good. So if anyone wants to volunteer to go first, and I'm happy to do that to let you know where I'm leading, but we would like to have a brief moment from each of you to say, which candidate. And so I guess we could go person by person of the committee applicants, or we can have each of us say the 2 that we are headed towards. So I'm open, however my colleagues want to chime in.
I'm happy to start.
Sure, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I was raising my hand this way. I would like to put forth the 2 candidates that I would like to have us move forward with. I'd like to have Elizabeth Edwards, absolutely no relation to me, last name Edwards. Elizabeth Edwards, as well as Alfredo Moreno, 2 qualified applicants who I felt most strongly reflected both experience, but also the values that we want to uphold through our budgeting process.
Thank you, Heidi. Felicita?
My votes are similar. Honestly, floored by Elizabeth. I was mostly so excited to meet her. Too, and like I said, we as an organization and we as a board just talked about our board values, and we said racial equity. So that means that in this case, Alfredo's lived experience matters in terms of our values and who we bring forward. I do want to say, if Anne is watching this, Anne is wonderful. I had the privilege of working with her on one of the outreach days because she served on the visioning committee. And my one concern with having any visioning committee member, though part of me loves the idea of them holding us accountable, and I hope they will, regardless of who's on our budget committee, I think too about who has had the privilege of influencing and shaping the district. And Anne got through a very competitive process to be on that committee. And so I want to be clear that she would be an asset to any committee. But in this case, I'm gonna lead with my values, and my vote would be for Elizabeth and Alfredo. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Tia.
Is this working? Okay. So Elizabeth, I think everybody was kind of floored by her. I remember texting Felicita while she was interviewing. So great. That was my number 1. For everything that Felicita said, though, I do put Anne as number 2 for myself, as far as with her work already with the district and her knowledge of, through visioning committee, of the things and the types of already interacting with our community and all the people she's talked to, the wealth of knowledge as far as creating our budget or prioritizing our budget. I think that's very important. And she has a little bit more history as far as, finances, as far as what she's done in the past. So I know Alfredo. I really respect him and love him, and I think he would be a great asset. And this decision is just so difficult and it's amazing that we have such 3 great candidates on top of everybody else we had applied. But in this case, because of Anne's knowledge of her visioning, I think that is a huge asset that I don't think should be surpassed, in that she just brings such a wealth of knowledge that could help with our focus and help with our budget and help with creating more ways of how we hear our community, in that she's talked to so many of them. So that is just the reasoning of me putting Anne as number 2, just by speech. Thanks.
Thank you, Tia. Wendy?
Thank you. First, I want to say that I think we're so lucky to have had such great candidates. We have an embarrassment of riches, really, from where we can choose. In my case, I looked at what I thought we needed for the budget committee, and I will say that Tia said it better than I could say it. I would pick definitely, and I will be voting for both Elizabeth and Anne. I believe Anne's experience, and I don't know any of them. So in fairness, I don't know anybody other than how they presented themselves. But Anne, because of her visioning experience, I believe brings so much to the board, to the budget committee, that I'd be hard pressed to see how anybody could do better. And Elizabeth, like everybody else has said, this person is a rock star. So that will be the 2 that I will be voting for. So thank you.
Thank you all so much for your sharing. And yeah, how fortunate are we to have such a hard decision tonight for people that want to be involved in our district. And I will just say that this feels reminiscent of when I got on the budget committee and there had to be a tie-breaking vote, and it feels uncomfortable. So I'm just going to acknowledge that feels uncomfortable for me. But hearing everything you have all said tonight does help me, and it helps me remember how I want to live out my values and make sure that I am being an example of how I want to see the world do better. So tonight my vote would be for Elizabeth and for Alfredo. So that's where we are. Felicia?
Based on my ability to do math, I do think we have consensus, or at least a majority. And you're right, this happened 2 years ago, and what Wendy said is perfect, an embarrassment of riches. But I will, based on everything that I've heard, I'll make a motion that the Board of Directors approve Resolution 2021-04, appointing Alfredo Moreno and Elizabeth Edwards to the Budget Committee, each for a term of 3 years.
And this is Heidi. I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Thank you, Felicita. Jessica, is this one we do a roll vote for as well?
Yes, please.
Okay, please do the vote.
Tia Ping,
This is new territory for me. I think I'm supposed to say no, although I know Alfredo will do a great job, but I still stand by that. I think Elizabeth and Anne would have been a better pick. Thank you.
Wendy Kroger,
Just like Tia, I will say no for the very same reasons, and that's sorry.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer Prick.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. Our next item tonight is the resolution naming new neighborhood parks and community trails. So, Liana, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. I just want to get a verbal that you can hear me okay.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. Really good to be here. You can go ahead and move on to the next slide there, Jessica. Thank you. So I am here tonight, kind of exciting. We're requesting board approval for resolution number 2021-05 for the new recommended park and trail names. Thank you, Gary Keck and Holly Thompson, for your great leadership and helping me get this project started. You can move to the next slide there, Jessica. Thank you. Just to give you all a reminder and a little bit of background of how we got to where we are today, we started a project about a year ago called the Names Catalog. And this is a list of names that we could pull from. And the intent here was really to aim for better equity between our communities and our site names. And so the focus was really on underrepresented communities and experiences, not that kind of broadly popular names with the dominant culture. And so what we had to do here was to do very targeted and intentional outreach to very specific individuals and organizations. And that was engagement through really in-depth discussions, interviews, and conversations, but also looking at historic and photographic archives. And the intent of this project was really to value and honor. Oh, sorry, can you go back? Oh, there we go. Thanks, Jessica. The intent here was to honor and value the diverse experiences and identities and really cultivate that sense of welcome in our parks that we want to cultivate. And one really important thing about this names catalog that I want to mention is that when we talk about those culturally significant names on this catalog, it was really critical to me and us working on this project that those names not come from me or the staff, but those names really emerged from within the leaders and organizations that we worked with. So there was no chance of potentially culturally co-opting those names, but those names would really be authentic to the experiences. Thank you, Jessica. Next slide would be great. All right, and then here's just a little overview of how we got to where we are also in terms of order. So once we got that names catalog, a good list there, we started some internal name committees, and those were groups of really diverse staff representing different areas of the district. And the naming committees helped us select names that better match with those park and trail sites. And then we took those names to the management team for some great input, as well as the community, and we got input there. And then we took them to the advisory committees. We took them to the one committee we went to was the Trails Committee, and then we also went to Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee. And now we're here with you all to seek final approval for those names. Next slide, Jessica, would be great. Thank you. And so jumping right into these names, the first one we have here was for the formerly known as Crowell Woods Area Park. For those of you who haven't been to this park, it's so beautiful, and it has all of these amazing community gathering spaces that were very intentionally developed and developed in relationship with some of our Latino and Latinx partners. And so the word recuerdo, park, is a Spanish word for memory, remembrance, and keepsake, and it evokes a place to gather in memory and community, and has the potential to serve as a reminder of history, culture, and people. And I think it would be really important to mention here is that as we've worked through this process, one of the things that we're really excited about in terms of next steps is looking at interpretive signage, so that each one of these names and each site will have its own interpretive signage to better unpack the pronunciation, but also help to really draw that continuity between what is this space and what is this name and how they relate. Thanks, Jessica. Next slide would be great. All right, so this one is formerly known as Bonnie Meadow Area Park. And the new name that was recommended here, or is recommended here, is Pio Pio Park. And this is a Spanish word for the chirp chirp sound that birds make in the big trees. Visitors can listen closely to see if they can hear the birds sing, Pio Pio. And what we were really excited about here with this name is you have almost kind of an urban oasis of trees, deciduous and conifer trees. You have the playfulness of the nature play area, and just a lot of potential for connecting that idea of playfulness and birds and Pio Pio through interpretive signage. And I also want to mention that there are a lot of other ways we can kind of draw this placemaking into these parks and trails when we name them. So an example would be we could have an event, an urban birding event at this park, or lots of other potential for programs or events that could better connect these identities and themes through the names. So next slide, Jessica. Thank you. And then we also have the Northwest Quadrant Youth Athletic Field. And this is a really interesting space because it's an athletic field, but it's also a park. And it's going to bring all different people from across the neighborhood together. And the name recommended here was Unity Park. Unity inspires that coming together of community, the uniting of people, and the sense that communities are stronger together. Next slide. Thank you. And this was a really interesting project because nobody lived in the Cedar Grove apartment building when we started this naming process. So what we did was the naming committee really looked at what is this site? Also kind of an oasis in a very urban area with lots of water and kind of reflective features. And so the name selected here was Reflections Plaza. And Reflections evokes that tranquil and thoughtful space. It offers an opportunity to reflect on ways that we as community can participate in changing narratives and how we see ourselves and each other reflected in public space. So a lot of opportunity for interpretive signage here and pulling that together. Next slide, Jessica. Thank you. All right, so those were our parks that we have, and now we're going to jump into our trails. And all of the trails that we are looking at naming right now are in the North Bethany area. Some of them are, we have segments that are already built, but are still waiting to have additional segments built, but we're ready to go ahead and name those to help continue the outreach and help with wayfinding. So just a couple things I want to point out on this map that were really helpful for me to learn when I started this process. The first one is that pink line you see up and down the middle, that section of the Waterhouse Trail, that segment is not yet constructed or developed, but that is planned there. And so we want to respect the continuity of that trail and maintain that name through the center of this map. The other thing that was very interesting that I learned early on that was really good to know for me was that the West Side Trail actually ends just below where that blue line begins on the right side of the map. So according to the Metro and THPRD Regional Trails Plan, that West Side Trail ends here and takes a hard right. And the agreement was that trail would reach Multnomah County and Portland. And so that had left us with these segments of trail just north of the West Side Trail that needed names. So that's what we have here. And then what I'll do is just go through each one of these names one by one. So Jessica, if you'd move me to the next slide. Thank you. So the first one we have here, this one is a greenway. You may have visited it. It's right along Bethany Creek, and the name that was decided on here was Bethany Creek Greenway. Really helps support wayfinding. The Bethany Creek refers to that creek and wetlands running through this greenway. The creek flows west from Multnomah into Bethany area and continues flowing underneath Northwest 160th and Joss Avenue. And there's, as you might imagine, lots of potential to work with interpretive signage in terms of how we sustain or support ecology and nature and environmental sustainability through our wetlands work. So I think that would be a way to explore interpretive signage. And it really, again, helps with wayfinding for those in the neighborhood and outside the neighborhood. Next slide there, Jessica. Thank you. So this orange section of trail that you see here, a little bit, you may find that this is familiar if you're familiar with Sato Elementary School. We thought this was a great opportunity to for wayfinding, to connect those people to the school. But it also kind of introduces this topic and opportunity to start working with some themes, so like Japanese heritage in the area, but also the theme of agriculture and farming in the Bethany area. So there's a lot of history and heritage to be able to unpack there, whether that's through interpretive signage or more. And so you, again, may be familiar with Sato, born in 1880 in Japan and came to the US in 1906. Purchased land in the Bethany area in 1911. The family came into Bethany as farmers and sent 2 sons to World War II, excuse me, while the family was forced into concentration camps and only 1 son returned from war. Now, something I really want to just take a moment on that has been really important in my personal learning as I've gone through my journey is this term concentration camp. And for some of us, that might not have surprised us here, that might be familiar in reference here, but for some of us, that might be new. So I wanted to take a minute to just unpack that. So one of the things that I've learned in my process is how important it is to really authentically reflect the experience of those that I spoke to and that we spoke to in this process. In this case, that would be our Japanese American leaders and the organization with the Nikkei Legacy Center. And this is the word that they use. And I think what they're really doing here is calling on us to name it what it is for them in their experience. So that's the word I'm using here. And if anybody would like to learn more about that and why we might use that term, I would be so excited to talk to you. And I would also be really be happy to connect you with some of the resources that were really helpful for me in my learning from the Nikkei Legacy Center. They have some amazing resources that are really accessible. So just wanted to put that out there in case anybody's interested. Thanks, Jessica. We can move on to the next slide. So again, staying with that theme, the name recommended here also connects with our Japanese heritage in the area and our farming and agriculture heritage, the Yoshihara Trail. And this is that large trail that wraps around North Bethany. The Yoshihara Berry Farm was established by the Yoshihara family. The Japanese American family, again, was forced to leave their home during World War II, and the family was taken to the Portland Assembly Center and later to a concentration camp in Idaho. But members of the family have since graduated universities and played critical roles in their communities and continue to grow their families. And I think that's an opportunity to also really think about when we think about either events, grand openings, or interpretive signage as we move forward, is this opportunity to really work with either the families or the Nikkei Legacy Center to really develop something really authentic and fun and exciting. Okay, next slide there, Jessica, thank you. Just the last couple notes I wanted to mention. As I talked to the advisory committees, as I got some great input from our community members, we got a lot of negative and a lot of positive input, and you may have read through some of the comments. So fascinating, helped us better understand where the community is, where how supportive some of our community members are, and helped us better understand different perspectives. But really, it was overwhelming to me how much positive feedback we received from our community and advisory committees, including this idea that THPRD is creating a more welcome environment with these names, that we are reflecting the diversity of our community in doing this, and we're continuing to search beyond the dominant culture when we bring these names forward. So really excited about that. Next slide, Jessica. Thank you. So just a few next steps that I wanted to share. We're excited to potentially adopt these new park and trail names. We look forward to continuing to develop that names catalog because there's so many organizations and leaders that we still want to work with to add more names to that list. And I think that's a live document that can keep on living and growing. As many of you know, I'm still working with our Land Acknowledgement Alliance, so we have that work happening. So that's really, again, about doing the important internal work first before we do our external work. So really ensuring that as we move forward, we are doing everything we can to positively build those relationships with tribal governments and our urban Indian community. And then number 4, we're looking forward to considering ways that we can integrate the naming process into the master planning process. And we think that if we can do that for some of these projects, we'll be able to, again, build that better sense of place and connection and community identity with each park. And we also heard some of that in the visioning that came out of the community visioning. So we can connect that work as well. And then the last one here is just to mention that we really want to be sure that we are evaluating and reevaluating our naming process. So this has been a great lesson for me to better understand what are those things I need to better communicate to the public about when we're moving forward with surveys and this information. And then also really to evaluate our renaming process, because that's something we want to be ready for too. Hopefully we won't be doing a lot of that, but just in case, we want to be really prepared. So that's really everything I have for you today. Jessica, I'm going to ask you to go to the last slide. I wanted to leave this slide up just so if you wanted to reference any of these names and ask any specific questions about them, you could. And I'm happy to take questions or comments.
Liana, thank you so much. We'll start with Tia.
Thank you, Liana. So I remember when I first came and presented this, and I was super excited at how intentional we were going to be, the background that we're going to go through with this, the community work. Felt like it was everything that as a board and as a district, this is really what we are about. So I am so thankful for you for bringing this up, for really taking charge of it and being so invested in it. I love the names. I was reading through all the comments and stuff, and some were to be expected, but the general enthusiasm for a lot of it, and the fact that it spoke to a lot of people as far as recognizing their heritage or their diversity or their communities or their culture was just amazing. And that's what we're intending to do as we have a big district that reflects a whole bunch of different communities. We want our different parts to reflect our community as a whole. And so just having these wealth and diverse names are just an incredible thing. My one thing, not to blow up everything else, is that with the Reflections Plaza, I think that was the only one where not even 50% was a positive feedback, right? Like it was at like 30% or whatnot. So my thing is, as far as the process wise, I'm wondering if we can hold off naming that, or if we can reevaluate our process, in that if there's not a big buy-in from the community, that maybe we need to take some time to really think about, well, how was that named picked? Should other options be considered, considering that, or even if we have to name it right now, if if people are not even living there yet, like, is there a reason why it has to be done now before people are living, or can we invest in once the community is there, that they own the surrounding, right? They're the ones that are going to be utilizing that space the most. They're the ones that are going to be walking into their homes and seeing this place. So I'd love to have them be invested in the name also, not just the community, but a local site is just as important too. So my only concern with this one was just that, in that we set it out, we said to the community, here's our name that we picked, that was thoughtfully done, but for some reason or another is just not being picked up well. And that I feel like it wouldn't feel very well to me to say, well, we picked it, we had good intentions, you don't like it, but because we had good intentions, that's going to be okay. So I would just, of all the names, just for that reflection, to be reflective of what we're hearing, and maybe take a pause for that one and kind of explore options and see how that will be a good learning as far as our process for naming and getting community input. My other thing is, I know there was a lot of work with these names, but I would like to see something a bit more active with the community, as far as like, well, here's a name, tell me what you think, rather than maybe giving a few options from our catalog to see if other names speak to that local group or whoever is commenting, to see if that's a possibility, just to increase the conversation more, rather than we get something like this where it's like Reflections and then they say no, and then we're like, okay, well, what do we do now? So those are just my thoughts, but thank you so much for this work. Like, it just speaks to my heart, and I think it speaks to everything that we intend to do, and I appreciate it so much.
Okay, Heidi.
Liana, thank you again. I always love hearing about the work you're doing. And I do, for the record, and maybe you already said, who helped you with this project? Because I know you couldn't just do it on your own. Maybe you could do it on your own, but you had some other folks who were helping you. Who were they?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sorry, for the sake of time, I should have mentioned it.
It's okay.
I did work with some really amazing interns who themselves live in underrepresented experience, and who just had brought amazing expertise, not only in their own experience, but in historic research as research students in graduate school.
Is it okay to put their name on the record for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Alexander Ibarra, as well as Paul Malamphy. Yeah.
Great. Thank you to both of them for this work. I know that they did a lot. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled about the names: Ricordo, Pio Pio, Unity, Reflections, Yoshihara, Waterhouse Trail, Sato, and Bethany Creek Greenway. I would say kudos to you and the team for all of the survey work you did, as well as all the presentations. And I'll leave it at that and let my peers make their comments.
Thank you, Heidi. Wendy?
Thank you, Liana, very much for your presentation and all your work. And I want to also say kudos to the communications department generally for the work they've done in this. One of the things that I have really appreciated, and I very much appreciated hearing from you this evening, the importance of wayfaring and wayfinding. I think that whenever we do names, if it is a trail, if it is a greenway, if it is, you know, those kinds of things, I really appreciate the fact that we keep them like West Side Trail. As long as there is a West Side Trail, the whole thing should be called the West Side Trail, not pieces and parts, because people are going to get real confused. So I really appreciate that. Secondly, I really appreciate that we're going forward going to do some good signage. Whenever you start a project like this, you jump in, it's just, you're in the middle. You are in the middle. There's stuff that already came and there's stuff that you want to do. And when you jump in the middle, you have some folks who say, okay, going forward, this is okay. I think we're going to have more resistance if we start trying to change lots of names that are already pretty well accepted. But if we have the opportunity to moving forward, we can balance out, as you have very much, your group has very much attempted to do. So I appreciate that. And the signage is going to be really important because members of the dominant culture, of which I am one, so I can say this, some of us give short shrift to other cultures and other history. And it's important for us to be able to share those with all of us because we all need to learn. And we all need to share. So I really appreciate the signage. I think the other thing I wanted to comment on was your continuing work to bring forth Indigenous people and recognition of where they were. I know when I first started looking at this, I looked at a history signage piece that was being done for one of the parks, and I honestly don't remember which one, but the history started in like 1847 with the land grant. And I went, wait a minute, there's some people who might have been here before then using this land. So I'm so happy to see that we are beginning to take a serious look at recognizing the Indigenous peoples who came before us and what they did and how they used the land, because we can learn many things from how they used the land. So I really look forward to this. I'm so grateful that you have brought this forward. Thank you for your work, and super.
Felicita?
Well, you know I love this. You know this is the stuff that gets me up in the morning. Thank you so much. This is beautiful and exciting. And I think too about how 30 years from now, the board members are going to say there were only 2 Spanish park names. How silly. Like, we just get better and better at this, more inclusive, more intentional, more living out our values. And I want to say that when we rename something, I think it gives the opportunity that there's like new ownership for everyone. And with inclusive names that are in Spanish that represent families of the past, we honor history, we bring more people to the table. Like, it's the ripple effects of this work really matter, and making people feel welcome into these spaces really matter. And I do also want to say that I personally couldn't help but read some of the comments and have a visceral reaction as a woman of color, as someone who grew up with an immigrant family. So I sort of want to give a virtual hug to all our staff who may have had a similar reaction. I called Ashley. I was really upset. And so I'm really thankful of the communications team that made sure that lots of people's voices were heard. I think this project that you have led, Liana, so perfectly exemplifies the values that is this board of directors, the values that is this leadership team at this organization. And so I applaud you, and I'm just so excited. I know there's going to be more. I know a year from now you're going to have a bunch more for us. So thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And you make us better, and we just appreciate you.
Thank you to all my colleagues. Liana, amazing as always. And I am so grateful to see also how quickly this came came together. I really do think, right, with like we, just a few minutes ago, we were talking about how long it's going to take for some of our other projects, right? And because things take time, I get that. But I think that this happened very quickly, but also like it was done with so much intention and thought. So thank you for that. I had one question to your point about the master planning, like if we could incorporate naming then. Is that why maybe we saw some of the feedback, for example, on Recuerdo Park, that they were like, well, it's already called Crowell Woods? Is it that they get used to calling it something while it's being developed, and then now they're like, why did you change the name?
Oh yeah, that's such a part of our internal conversation every day with this. It's so relevant. Yeah, I think it's in integrating the naming into the master planning process is twofold. I think it kind of speaks to what Tia was mentioning in terms of how do we better build a connection to the site and a sense of place in our community. And I think by doing that during the master planning process, while we might not be able to do that every time during a master planning because every project's so different, but as much as we can, that can help the community better connect and get a sense of excitement around a park, but also a theme in that park, right? So that's kind of exciting. And then also to your point about this idea of the former name, one of the things I think we're really trying to move towards is actually moving away from using a former property owner's name, which can really kind of tie us into that idea of this is who this property belonged to and this is what this property is, when it's really just the person who had the money to purchase that land. Not that that can be really important sometimes, and we do have a policy around donating land, and there are situations in which we have very appropriately named parks after donors, but we really want to try to get away from that in terms of when we do outreach for a project. So as we move forward, when we do outreach for future parks, we're going to be referring to not necessarily a park name or the former property owner's name, but we're going to be referring to the actual physical location of that park. So like the intersection or a location that would not necessarily be deeply associated over the long term as a park name. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's wonderful. Thank you. Holly, I see your hand is up.
It is. I just want to echo and say my gratitude. We're so blessed to have Liana having led this project. She's done such a beautiful job for us. And I want to take it a little bit of a step further to ask the board for your help. One of the things that I think Liana spoke so eloquently to tonight is the intentionality of the work of connecting with partners that represent, that work with, that are the underserved populations, and really taking their guidance for suggested names of historical meaning for these areas. And, in our good intentions, a lot of times we get contacts from folks that come from maybe a more dominant culture perspective, and the intent is so positive to say we want to name this something and we have this idea, but it really isn't the route that we want to take. We really want to draw from the work that Liana and the interns have done with our partners to develop that really good list for us, to do the intentional outreach and the master planning process to round out those lists even more. So really appreciate our board members being attuned to that, knowing our direction, understanding it will take time, to do this work right. It takes intention, it takes building bridges, and it takes a lot of listening and not a lot of jumping into action from a more dominant culture perspective. So I just want to advocate for the work a little bit. I know you all are with us. I know you 100% are leading the charge, but that's, I think, one thing the board could do for us to be really helpful with the constituents, with the patrons that you speak with, that care about this issue, that want to see it move quicker, that have a specific idea for a name. It's funny, I remember when we were talking about setting up the process, we were very clear. If we came up with a suggested name, but it didn't come from community members, it did not make it on the list. It had to come from the people that we want us to see, who are typically not at the table at this process. So thank you, and your help is much appreciated.
Thank you, Holly. Heidi?
Thank you. I would like to make a motion, if I may. I don't want to lose Tia's comment regarding Reflections Plaza, but I do, just sort of echoing what Holly had to say with respect to the time and the effort and the energies and the outreach that was done with respect to all of these Park Plaza trail names. I would like to move these forward as a slate of parks and trails that we rename at this point in time. So I'm going to make the motion that we move that the Board of Directors approve resolution number 2021-05, naming new park and trail sites as listed.
Thank you, Heidi. Before we get a second, because I want to make sure I stay in order, was there something else, Tia, you wanted to say? Are you comfortable with us moving forward?
No, yeah, I mean, I guess I understand where Holly's coming from, and I don't mean to make it sound like I'm not supportive or that there hasn't been a ton of work from all of this stuff. It just, and I know there was only 19, I think there was only like 19 people who whatever, and I guess maybe, you know, for all the other names, it just seems like there was a really good backstory for it, and Reflections just, even for me right off the bat, was like, oh, that's a little bit kind of like, not a second thought, but it's I don't know. But I just wasn't sure if there was, I'm sure there's a huge backstory to it. I'm sure there's whatnot. It's just, I just feel a little bit uncomfortable when to present it to the public and say only 30% of people thought, you know, approved of this thing, that we couldn't just take a step back and say, okay, well, let's reevaluate. And maybe you did, Liana, maybe there was some kind of reevaluation and there's nothing else in the catalog that fits that particular space. I don't know. I'd like to hear your thoughts and your feelings of when you did receive that comment, like what were your thoughts or whatnot as far as the process and how we can do better, right? This is all a learning process for all of us. So
yeah, maybe Liana, if I could say a few words, because it's interesting, this specific topic. Liana and I spent some time the other day just talking through the aspects of weighing responses from the public and the challenges of reading a lot into them or not enough into them. I mean, it's more of an art than a science, and we all recognize, and I recognize, Tia, you're not saying, well, no, we got to reach 51%. We know the reality is that the dominant culture will speak into these things without regard necessarily to the effort we're doing. Some of it is genuine, some of it is appropriate, some of it is, in fact, a little reactionary, and it forces our process. And I think the process that Liana went through, that we have to acknowledge that sometimes we're going to have to press into these situations, and uniquely, the very people that will live in this building they won't really know the story behind the naming process. They will know it from ground zero of the name Reflections, if that's the board's choice. Because you're right, Tia, they don't live there. And I think maybe that maybe calls us to reflect back a little bit of your earlier comments of maybe the consideration when we don't have people immediately around. We run into these problems in the front end of North Bethany and in the front end of South Cooper Mountain, where there is not a population. And we maybe want to speak into that. That's something that certainly I'm sure Liana would be interested in looking at, that there may be an appropriate pause in that process. But Liana, go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Tia, for the amazing question, and thank you, Doug. I also felt some of the same challenges, Tia, and also felt all the same things that Holly and Doug have mentioned too. And this was a very challenging apartment complex, as nobody lived there. And the great point of what do we do when we have a new park coming up, but nobody lives in the neighborhood, and we're trying to develop a master plan and a name. So, you know, I wish I had a really clear answer as to like exactly what to do. I think more than anything, I'm going to look and lean on my leadership, and not to escape the question, but I think personally, I love the idea of keeping the name, and I love the idea of going back to the community, and I would support whatever you all as leadership thought was the best decision. I think that it will be challenging either way. You know, whether we try to name sites when there's nobody there, and it'll be challenging if we pick a name and then people don't like it. You know, so I'm sorry that's such a non-answer that I'm providing today. But I think more than anything, it is such a great opportunity to learn and figure out how are we going to do this as we move forward, and what is the best avenue and answer.
Thank you, Liana. Heidi, I'm sorry I interrupted your motion. I guess maybe this is like a quick consensus thing, if we could get a feeling right on.
Well, we have a motion on the floor.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Yeah. Is there a second?
This is Felicity. I'm happy to second.
Okay.
And
so
then to vote.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a vote. And this would be to Heidi's motion. Would you repeat your motion, Heidi, just to make sure?
Yeah, my motion is I move that the Board of Directors approve resolution number 2021-05, naming the new park and trail sites as listed here.
Thank you, Heidi, and it was seconded by Felicitas. So Jessica, would you please take the vote?
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer-Britt.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you all. And Liana, I would love those resources you mentioned in your presentation.
I'll be happy to send those on.
Thank you so much. Okay, our next agenda item. Actually, does anyone need a quick, we're behind schedule, but if we need a quick break, I understand. But if we're good to power through, we'll power through.
I say power through.
Okay. All right. So general manager's report.
Okay, we're going to have Janine speak into the Twalton Valley Trail update. We're passing again on the Beaverton Creek Trail only because we had a few recent meetings, and based on those, we have a little bit more work to do, and we anticipate that will come to the board. Well, it'll be February, in that February neighborhood. Janine, you want to start out? Or
I will introduce our urban planner, Peter Swinton. I don't think the board has had the pleasure of meeting him yet. We are very lucky to have him. He brings a multitude of talent, from some technical data analysis to some great writing skills, policy analysis. And I just want to give kudos to him before he starts, because he started at the district on March 16th, Monday, March 16th. And then on the 18th, we said, go home and work and figure this all out from a distance. And he's really fit into the district, and I think is a great asset. So with that, I'm going to turn this presentation over to him.
Thanks, Janine. It's been a wonderful experience working for the district so far, and I hope to continue for many years. So reason I'm here tonight is to give an overview and update on the Tualatin Valley concept plan. So without further ado, I will do that. Running from Southwest 166th Ave, 60th Ave in Beaverton to East Cornelius Pass Road in Hillsborough, the Tualatin Valley Trail is a regional trail that was first added to Metro's Regional Trails and Greenways Plan update in 2002. Shortly thereafter, it was adopted as part of the 2002 Washington County 2020 Transportation Plan and included in the 2004 amendment to the 2000 Regional Transportation Plan. The trail is also referenced in THPRD's 2006 Trails Master Plan and 2016 Trails Functional Plan, as well as a host of other plans around the area, such as the Hillsborough Parks and Trails Master Plan, the TV Highway Corridor Plan, the 2014 Regional Transportation Plan, and the 2018 Aloha Tomorrow Community Plan. Part of the region's Path to the Pacific and Surf to Turf Trail system, the Tualatin Valley Trail is expected to connect to the Council Creek Trail, running from Hillsborough to Forest Grove, and then to the Salmonberry Trail that connects all the way out to Tillamook. Locally, the Tualatin Valley Trail will provide commuting, recreation, and travel benefits that will help THPRD patrons live more active and healthy lifestyles, while better connecting them to district parks, trails, natural areas, and athletic facilities. The ongoing Tualatin Valley Trail Concept Plan, which I'm engaging with through the county's Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC, will study and select a preferred alignment through the Aloha-Reedville community, and it will help achieve the broader regional goals of connectivity, access, and mobility within the TV Highway Corridor. Through this project, the TAC has explored and advised on several alignment alternatives, including Southwest Johnson, Alexander, Shaw, and Blanton streets, as well as TV Highway. And once a preferred alternative is selected, a conceptual design, planning level cost estimate, and recommended implementation strategy will be developed for the trail. Next slide, please. So throughout the summer and early fall, county staff and their consultants studied each alignment and presented data on each to the TAC and the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for review and discussion. From these and other engagement efforts, county staff have narrowed the potential field of trail alignments and created some trail design examples. Throughout the winter, staff will work to identify a preferred alignment and conceptual design. Next slide, please. In each TAC meeting, members evaluate the alignment options according to the criteria of safety, connectivity, health and livability, agency coordination, and equity. Based on those criteria, the possible alignments have been refined to 3, Southwest Johnson, Shaw, and Blanton streets. And the discussion is largely focused on Southwest Shaw and Blanton Street, on the Southwest Shaw and Blanton Street alignments. Of those 2 alignments, the Southwest Shaw Street Alternative B, which is the solid orange to orange dotted line, scored the highest, followed by Southwest Shaw Alternative A, which is the solid orange line. And then third is the Southwest Blanton Street alignment, which is the solid yellow line. Each of these alignments has their pros and cons, but the most notable ones are for the Southwest Shaw alignments. The biggest pro is that it's the most direct path with the fewest trail hazards. So those are things like curb cuts where cars could cross the trail. But the drawback is it's adjacent to the railway there, and that could complicate development as well as make for some tricky intersection crossings. And then with the Southwest Blanton alignment, the pros are that it connects best to area parks and it has a really attractive complete streets design. However, it does have the most curb cuts of any of the alignment options, which increases the car-bike collision risk. And there's kind of a nasty intersection at 185th that could be difficult to navigate for users. ODOT has mentioned through the process that they're considering fixing the intersection, but it sounds like that hasn't been fully decided yet. Next slide, please. So as a TAC member, I've been largely advocating for the Southwest Blanton and Shaw Street alignments. I feel these alignments best solve for health and safety, equity, and connectivity and livability issues. And I feel they have an attractive design that would help promote safe and efficient user behavior while lowering maintenance costs if THPRD were to assume responsibility for management of the sections within the district's boundary, which is an ongoing discussion. So other reasons I like these alignments are that both would connect to the West Side Trail at 158th and provide close connection to THPRD parks and area schools. The Southwest Blanton Street alignment creates the best connection with a direct connection to Barsati Park and a near direct connection to Arnold Park, the Beaverton International School, and Kinnaman Elementary. Also, it would be a great asset south of TV Highway, which is an area within the study corridor that was more disinvested than those other areas within the corridor. So finally, though I'm the only staff member participating in the process, THPRD patrons from the Nature and Trails Advisory Committee are participating on the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. So that ensures that passionate community voices familiar with THPRD's trail system are also represented in the concept plan development process. Next slide, please. So with that, thank you for your time and attention. I was grateful for the opportunity to present for you tonight, and happy to help answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Peter. Wendy?
Thank you, and thank you, Peter, very much for bringing us this information. I've been interested in this development for a while, so I'm happy to see it moving ahead. I was just wondering, is this, I had a couple of questions. Is this a regional trail? Are we going to build it to regional trail standards is number one. Number two, is it going to be directly on the street or immediately adjacent to the street, or will it be off-road? And so those were two things that I was interested in. I believe both Shaw and Blanton have a lot of driveways or curb cuts and a lot of small businesses, especially on Shaw. And I just wondered what the impact there would be. So if you could kind of address those, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. For the regional trail standard, yes, they are being built to a regional trail standard. They're planned as regional trails. As for the on-street design, there are different designs that we've seen for different sections of each trail, so it varies a little bit. But what I can tell you for the Shaw Street alignment, much of that is on street, and it would have a sort of dedicated area, but it would share the street with cars. As for the Blanton alignment, that one is separated from the street. It's in a cycle track design, which basically has two bicycle tracks that run parallel to the street. So that's a really nice complete streets design, and it does separate bikes away from the street, but it has a lot of curb cuts, so there is the potential for cars to be backing up through those cycle tracks, which could create issues. So the conceptual designs haven't been finalized by any means, but that's a sort of overview of some of the ones that they're looking at for Southwest Shaw and Southwest Blanton.
Thank you. And if it's any, I mean, I'm going to stick my oar in and just say that a lot of people much prefer trails that are not directly on streets. So for whatever possibility there is to get us off the street, even if it's not all the way. I'm just going to stick my oar in for that. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Wendy. Felicita?
I'll join Wendy in sticking an oar in about keeping folks off the main streets. I think a lot about some of the things that I learned during, I served on the Metro Transportation Local Investment Team, something like that. I'm forgetting. But they talked a lot about some of the infrastructure issues there, as well as air quality in that area. And I'm also curious, maybe this is a question for Ashley or Doug, but the information about this in the packet was limited, which is fine. So I'm digesting all of this right now. So I guess what's being asked of us for this, just general information for us to know.
Yeah, I was going to say we're bringing this just as information, as something we're participating in. And I really appreciate the comments on the on-street versus off-street, because going way back, I had been the project manager for the city of Hillsborough for the TV Highway Corridor Plan, where this trail, the question then was, should it be on TV Highway or one of these parallel routes? I should also mention, this is how Aisha and I met. And it's nice to see that the conversation has moved, because you have the avid biking commuters who want to get from point A to point B that said, put it on the highway. We're in a built environment. We do not have the perfect solutions. So kudos to the county for taking this on.
I appreciate the update, and nice to meet you, Peter.
Nice to meet you as well.
Yes, Peter, great job with your first presentation to us. Thank you so much for the update. We love our trails, and this is a great one, I think, especially given like the commutability piece of it, and so important for just for our community in general. So thank you. Doug, what is up next?
You bet. We've got recreation program update, and that's Aisha.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Aisha Panis, your Director of Park and Recreation Services. And Janine is right. That is when we started working together. I think we went a little further back in history to the Measure 37 days, but definitely we had our first joint project when I was at the county as the project planner on the TV Highway Corridor. And I remember one of our first meetings being asked, what do we want to see? What would be a success looking at TV Highway Corridor plan? And thinking of Felicita's comments about air quality, my comment was more trees. We need trees and trees, and that would definitely create a much more pleasant environment for folks that would be traveling by foot or by bike on that corridor. So I'm very anxious to see how this is all going to play out, and I'm happy to see that Peter's going to be taking this on for us. So with that said, I'd like to move into our programming updates. So on the next slide, I would like to start with some of the constraints that we are under currently. So this is the not so great news, and then hopefully the great news of the presentation. But the first part I want to talk about is just what the risk and protection framework means to us in trying to deliver quality services to the public right now. And as you know, we've been restricted in what we have been able to offer since mid-November, and that's a result of the rising case counts. And what that means within our community is that we've been in that extreme risk category, and so we've been watching to see what we're able to do. Every week we get new information from the state. And so yesterday was a movement week day for us. So there was some indication last week that things weren't quite going in the direction that we thought we want to see. And yesterday that was confirmed with the news that we were going to be remaining within extreme risk category. And if anything were to change for us, an announcement's made on Tuesday, and the following Friday is when the change would occur. So we've been in extreme risk. We will remain in extreme risk. And so taking into account this information we receive from the state helps us with our own operating plan. So on the next page of the presentation, what you'll see are the factors that we take into account as we're trying to plan what those operations look like. So the duration of risk level is something that we're just mindful of, because there's the chance that we may have to make some more drastic operational changes if this is going to look like it's months and months much longer. But that duration is really affected by things like the vaccine availability and that trajectory of the risk data. So we were really pleased to see the numbers kind of dropping gradually over time, headed in the right direction. And now we're looking at a slight bump up again. And we know we had holidays. We aren't in a place too different from what we expected from prior to the Christmas holiday, but we're just mindful and we're watching all this. And then another factor that we're considering is in terms of our staffing, are we keeping everyone busy? Are we working on those tasks that are critical for our operations? We do have activities we're still able to offer in the community, and I'll be going through some of those. But we also need to look at some of those projects that don't necessarily get the attention in a very, very busy part of the year. And certainly we would qualify the last several months as that busy, busy time of year where we were reinventing things left and right, establishing new practices. Everything was go, go, go. And so we've used this time as a way to catch up and to tackle some of those projects that we've not had a chance to do. So for now, everything is moving along. We're staying very busy. And of course, we are still providing critical services to the community. So on the next slide, what you'll see is the information that we're getting from the state. And this is posted on the state website and the OHA website. And what I wanted to show you here is just what kind of changes we're seeing over time. So about a month ago, the image on the left side of the screen shows where the county risk levels were. Red is not great. Orange is a little bit better. Yellow is a little bit better, and green is where we would love to be one day. On the right side of the screen, this was information that was based on 2 weeks ago. And you see that there were movements, and there were movements in the right direction. All those changes and all those restrictions that had come into place in mid-November had made a difference. Case counts were going down. What we know, though, is that you move into that next level down, more things open up, more opportunities to get out and recreate, to eat, to drink, to socialize. And what we know based on information released last week and confirmed yesterday is that some of those orange, for example, that are on the map on the right side, those are moving back into red. So we do have, I think, 26 of Oregon's 36 counties are in the red extreme risk category as of this coming Friday. So if we can move to the next slide. What you see on this slide is some data tracking that we've been doing here internally. And so I think Lori Baker is maybe the one person at the agency even more into these numbers than I am. And she has created for us this lovely rolling calendar that helps us really hone in on our specific Washington County trajectory and case counts. And so she receives this information every day, plugs it into the table. And like I said, I think the fifth column over from the right side of the screen, you'll see that we had dipped down. We had that lowering trajectory from the end of November, where we saw things dipping, and that was encouraging, and we were very happy about that. But of course, the holidays came and we're bouncing back up a little bit. So it's critical to watch what's happening here. And in terms of what we're learning through this process, it's that if we were to reach that next level down, and you can see where that would happen on the lines on this chart, because that orange line that you see midway on the table is where we would enter the high risk category. The yellow, if you go below the yellow, you'd then be in the moderate category, and then green is that low risk category. So we know there's a bit more room for us to go, but we also know that counties that have gone into the lower, especially if they've cleared that line by only just a little, you've got to very carefully watch the next few weeks to see how things are going to go, because you can bounce back over that line pretty easily. So this is what we're monitoring as we move through our risk and protection framework. So now I think if we go to the next slide, we'll be able to enter into happier news. So what we wanted to talk to you about now are just some things that are going on in the recreation world and what we are able to provide despite being in that extreme risk category. So The big news since we've last talked to you is on this next slide, and it's that while in the extreme risk category, one thing that we can do is offer our outdoor swimming pools. And we did have the project out at Raleigh last year, and that project had a few warranty issues that we needed to resolve. And as soon as we were able to do that, we looked at opening up Raleigh. So it took a couple of weeks. We had to get the temperature up. As you can imagine, a outdoor pool was a little cool, but we got it up to, I think, an 85-degree level, which helps with the time that people are spending out on the deck and then jumping into that water. But we're now offering public lap swim at a number of times per day. We're able to serve almost all of our aquatic clubs that are typically at the aquatic center. And then we're able to offer private rentals as well. So there may be other groups that aren't part of our aquatics clubs that may want to take advantage of the pool there. So we have shifted staff around. Those that may have been in centers when they were open and are now not open are helping us out at these sites. And so we're thrilled about Raleigh. And as you're aware, we do have a project going at Somerset West currently, but we are looking at the soonest we might be able to open that pool as well, as long as we're still in that extreme risk category. So next slide, please. We do continue to offer our childcare programs, and we did have a little break over the holiday when our programs were shut down, but they are back in session now, and we've got all sorts of fun activities happening there. One great bit of news, just so you're aware, we were able to secure a number of dollars from both the county and the CARES funding, but also through our early learning department. And so we've got funding that can help us cover some of those costs of increased cleaning, increased ratios, et cetera, that allow us to deliver these programs. But another big news thing that we'll be able to talk to you more about at future meetings is that we did have demand to expand our preschool program at the Nature Center. So we're excited to have another classroom full of cuties like these. And on the next slide, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our virtual recreation center. We have started this from scratch. This didn't exist early in 2020. So this was a brand new thing for us. And we've done a number of different activities through the virtual rec center. One of the things that we did a couple of months back, or early December, I believe, was offer a bunch of live streamed classes for the first time. Everything prior to that had been pre-recorded or linked to content elsewhere on the web. And we did our very first own live stream fitness classes. And you heard from Eileen Kravitz earlier in the evening about the Park Foundation. And one of the things I wanted to thank her and the Board of Trustees for was providing us with some video equipment that allowed us to deliver this type of content to the community. So we did offer free fitness classes through the portal, and we also started offering paid registration classes through this same virtual rec center. So we're carefully monitoring what seems to be of interest to the community, where we're getting signups, and we're trying to adjust our content offerings based on what seems to be resonating with the community. So that's our virtual rec center. And then we also do have quite a few activities happening within our mobile recreation, which you'll see on the next slide. And so where we've looked to provide these services are to co-locate at the sites where Beaverton School District is handing out free food distribution boxes. So that's been a great opportunity to know that folks are going to be there. They're able to come gather some food, but also take home activity kits with them. Right now, the focus is more on handing out the kits rather than maybe leading an activity to assemble whatever's in the kit. But we've made that adjustment based on those higher case counts and the higher risk that that we're in the extreme risk category. So we are also working with partners. We're working with low-income housing developments, and we are also able to take advantage of the funding that Eileen mentioned in her presentation about those activity kits to hand out. And you should be aware that we have these programs funded, the various mobile recreation programs that I've talked to you about, Rec Mobile, Nature Mobile, Wellness on Wheels, our new adaptive recreation mobile, and then we also have Fitness in the Park that I'll talk about, I believe, on the next slide. But all of those programs have been funded through the CARES grant that does end at the end of March. So that $116,000 you heard from Eileen about is what's going to help continue to fund these efforts through the end of our fiscal year through the end of June. So with regard to the Fitness in the Park, we have folks that are committed to participating with us despite the weather that we've seen and despite what we saw last night in particular. There are still folks that want to come out and join us for activities within our parks. And so it's been a great thing to see. We have definitely tried to accommodate them. We try to focus on cardio to keep people really active and engaged. And we do locate under our covered areas at numerous sites where we're able to do that. So on the screen, you'll just see a number of options for people to participate in the Fitness in the Park activities. So next slide, please. Again, I wanted to just call out that we are offering these online registration classes and that we have tried to hit all of the various demographics so that everybody has an opportunity to participate with us. We did start registration in mid-December for classes that start now. And again, this is something that we've not offered before, so we are carefully watching registrations and will adapt our programming as we go on. Next slide, please. And these online classes, this is a fun one. We are offering Polar Bear series, and that's what you see here. And so it's youth sports activities that are held rain or shine, and they kicked off for the very first time yesterday. And what a day to start off and really test out that rain or shine, because it was sideways rain out there. But these are in-person classes, registration classes, and we are starting to get some great feedback from folks that are participating with us that are thanking us for providing options where their children can get outside, no screens, no fighting with their siblings, and take part in some physical activities. So we're really excited to see where this goes. And yesterday on the Oregon Recreation and Park Association admin section call, there was a request to share any successes or innovations that you're doing, and I was very happy to share this one. I think it's going to be a neat one, and we certainly have lots of children clamoring to participate. So next slide, please. Also, just wanted to put out a plug that our fawn kits are out there, and these are Fostering Awareness and Wonder of Nature. Of course, this was a name that was developed by our Nature Center staff. They always have the cutest names. I'll remind you of Knee-High Naturalists is one of their specialties. But these are great kits that allow you to access nature and interpret nature from wherever you are. And so I did snap one of these up right away for the niece and nephews to have a little fun with out in the wooded area behind my house. And so we do have these available. You can access them by going to the Nature Center's website and order one for yourself. And I think that might be the end of our presentation. If we go to that next slide, I am available to answer questions and to share these adorable photos with you.
Aisha, thank you so much. I think that there might be a Felicita and Ashley dance class reunion at these virtual dance class offerings.
Nice.
Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Tia.
Aisha, I just want to say this is amazing. I'm so excited. The pictures are so cute. I'm just floored by the creativity of the staff of working with just such trying times and being a bright spot in our community and making sure that we're constantly flexible. I know how hard that could be, and it's just so amazing how great our staff is. So I just want to make sure to say thank you, and thank you to all of our staff who continually create opportunities for our community, and it's just a wonderful thing to be a part of. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll make sure to pass on those very kind words. I agree. They are an enthusiastic and crazy talented bunch of people. It's an honor to work with them.
Awesome. Felicita.
Thank you for putting on the record about our dance reunion, Ashley. This is awesome and wonderful. And I mean, it's such a, our community is so lucky to have THPRD, and thank you so much to the staff. I was just noting that I feel like Aisha always is at the end of our meetings and we're all just a little tired. So I'm sorry, Aisha, but we appreciate you and all the work that staff do. And this is really critical work, and y'all have had to do so much with so little and stay on your toes and be nimble. So thank you. It doesn't go unnoticed.
Thank you so much.
The other thing I wanted to say is thank you also for showing just the data side of things, right? The chart you had is so helpful to just like really clearly see where things need to go. I try to follow the OHA updates, and when they just added those arrows, right, that was really helpful to see, and like to see that chart laid out. We have a ways to go. I think sometimes it's easy to forget we like how upended our world has been because of this pandemic. And so that's just a good reminder, right? So many lives have been lost because of this and have been impacted by this. And I just know how much our community has got to love all of the work that you and your team are doing to create the places for them to still engage in something as normally as they can. So thank you for bringing us tonight, both the data and all of the amazing programming, because I think it's helpful to see, like, we unfortunately have a ways to go, right? Like, it's going to be a while before we get down to that next tier down of risk level. And also, I'm so excited that Raleigh Park is open. I live very nearby, and so I got to see all of the changes happening to it last year, right? And with COVID and everything, it was such a bummer it didn't get to reopen on time. And so we did walk by at lunchtime today because I was like, I gotta go see if anyone's in the pool. And they weren't at that moment, but also it's cold, right? So, but I expect that we'll be seeing lots of people in the pool. So thank you. Thank you
so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Our next agenda item is new business. So we have the System Development Charge 5-year Capital Improvement Plan update. Janine.
So yes, Janine Rustad, your planning manager, and this is where the apology should come in for this being one of the last thing on your agenda when you're tired. Next slide, please, Jessica. So every year we do take a look at the 5-year capital improvement plan. It's two parts, of course, the revenue and the expenditures, how we're going to develop our parks and trails. This year was particularly challenging because it's hard enough to try to predict development in I'll call a normal year, but throw in a pandemic, it made it particularly challenging. So one thing that we do is we do track the permit activity on a monthly basis. So I looked at the activity from January to November, particularly focusing in on this fiscal year, and use that as part of the base of predicting how the rest of the year would finish out and then the coming years would go. I also attend the monthly planning directors meeting where we have been regularly, I should say the permitting jurisdictions have been regularly sharing the status of both land use applications and their building permits. In March and April, we saw drastic slowdowns because of, we were all just learning how we could work and cope in this pandemic. That has since picked up. Of course, we're regularly talking to developers, especially in the new urban areas where we are seeing most of the development happen. We also this time had to adjust for our new rates. We had to adjust for the change in definitions of multifamily. Now anything that's attached is multifamily, so we had to make some adjustments there. And then this year, it ended up not being as big as a reduction in forecasted development because of we've had some really big multifamily come through. A lot of that, if you drive by Murray and TV Highway, you'll see, I think that's a planned 550-ish multifamily units. But North Bethany and Bonnie Slope West were pretty strong on the single family, and slowly South Cooper Mountain is coming, getting built out. So I just want to remind everyone that we will look at this every year, so we get to ground truth this. The target here was to be even more conservative than we've been in the past because we still face uncertainty. And I should mention also that as Wendy did, I attended the Home Builders Association housing forecast. I attend that every year, and I always keep that in the back of my mind when looking at our forecasts. So that's the revenue side. Jessica, if you can advance. And then we have our annual project list. This, thank you to Gary and Bruce for helping me determine how much we think we can take on with staffing, but also a reminder that one of the first things I did is now we have the affordable housing waivers, and I looked at the affordable housing that's in the pipeline, and you'll see that I subtracted that out of the available revenue, so we're not counting that in available revenue. One of the things I noticed is that while we are going to hit the target of the units available at the 30% median family income, for the Metro Bond housing, it looks like less of that will be built in the other affordable housing that the city of Beaverton predicted, that their developers are looking more at that 60% MFI. So I made that adjustment to our available annual income or revenue. Land acquisition is pretty steady. We want to make sure that we're covering the remainder of the land acquisition for North Bethany. There's still little, mostly trails, and then South Cooper Mountain. But more importantly, we want to make sure that we are funding to have money available for underserved areas. A lot of that will hopefully be downtown Beaverton in the coming years with the development we're seeing happen there. And then with the development of the land we own, our functional plan still guides the priorities, that adopted plan. I know there have been questions along the way of where does the vision action plan fit in. When we update the functional plan, we will use that to look at our criteria of how we prioritize development, but it will definitely inform the master planning of the parks that will move forward. Another change we made, it was very cumbersome to have a low and high cost estimate. And Gary's team has become very efficient with cost estimating, and we will adjust annually. We'll have two adjustments. One is the statutory one that we do for our SDCs, but Gary and I will work together to look at what is the actual costs of development looking like. So since we have become very accurate on the cost estimating, we just have one cost estimate in this new 5-year CIP. So next slide. So our next steps is we'd like to get input from you this evening. We'll return then in February, incorporating that input for approval, and then we'll use this 5-year CIP for the upcoming budgeting process. Of course, we're going to continue to track the permitting, and we track that by geographic area, how the CIP is laid out to make sure, especially in these new urban areas, that we are delivering the amenities that are promised. And then again, we will look at this every year. So I will be before you every December or January to look at this again prior to the budget season. So with that, I think the next slide is for questions. And I'm sorry, I don't have pretty pictures like Aisha.
It's okay, Janine. It's okay. Okay, questions, comments from my colleagues. Felicita.
My question is, this might be too big picture, and I don't expect Janine for you to be like, oh, it's these, and these. When I think about our visioning process and everything that was done there, and as a community member thinking, well, here's what I told the district what I thought was needed. And I just want to make sure that patrons can help like connect the dots. And I know that there's different buckets of funds, and we can't spend, we can't necessarily build bathrooms with this pot of funds, and we can't build more parks with this pot of funds. And I think in this work that we're doing now, like, and I applaud us for having a budget that's so accessible, and we can still do more to help people connect the dots around, well, you know, I love that it's divided by, you know, geographic area. I think that's super helpful. But I think, and maybe this is a time during the budget presentation of highlighting, like, you know, reminder, like, we as a board voted on that visioning report, that we were committed to the work there, that we were committed to the thousands of residents who share their feedback. Where does that tie into these big budget decisions? That'd be helpful in the future. Thanks, Janine.
Okay, thanks.
Any other, my colleagues have questions, comments, concerns? The feedback I will give, Janine, I just think, I mean, obviously we do this as a matter of practice every year, but I think this year especially, right, like we all are so familiar with like what's happening around us, and like that there's a lot of economic changes that have happened. So I appreciate like the adjustments to just be extra cautious, right? To like not like to I'm lacking the word I want to say, but like I like that there was the attempt at like being realistic, right, about like what could potentially happen, and also gives us just a more realistic picture of like what does that 5-year project plan look like when we know that, like, you know, how a single year can really affect that whole 5-year plan. So I don't know the feedback other than just like it looks good, and thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and that is something very important with this plan, that even with being more conservative, we are still going to be able to deliver a pipeline of projects and continue to develop and realize, I'm pointing to my vision action plan that sits on my desk here, realize that, make it a living document. So yeah, it's awesome. Challenging, but fun.
Awesome. Wonderful. Okay. Any other comments from my colleagues? Okay, then we will move to, well, did you get enough out of us? I guess we can always email you, right? I know this was a hard one to digest. So if anyone has any other questions or comments for Janine, do please feel free to reach out.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, great. Okay, so our last item tonight is a resolution amending district compiled policies, chapter 6, to include the retirement plan funding policy. Lori?
Good evening, and just thrilled to be the last item on your list and talk about pension, which I'm sure everyone is excited about. As you're aware, the district does not participate in the Oregon PERS plan. Instead, we provide our own defined benefit retirement plan for full-time and regular part-time employees. The plan was adopted by the district in 1975 and was most recently amended in June and October of 2020 to implement plan design changes. The district has provided funding for the plan based upon annual recommendations of our actuaries, but we currently do not have a funding policy. We're asking the board to consider approval of a proposed funding policy this evening. Next slide, please. So I do have some pictures. Pension funding is something that most of us have heard of through a variety of news reports. Funding levels are representative of the amount of dollars that have been set aside to provide for payment of retirement benefits earned. In order to get a sense for the average funding levels, I thought I would start with this map, which shows the most recent data available, seriously, from 2018, of the funding levels for government plans throughout the United States. As you can see, there is a variety of levels, with New Jersey reporting in at 38.4% and South Dakota leading the way at 100% funded. The U.S. average funding level for governmental retirement plans in 2018 was 90.1%, and Oregon was close to that average at 82.1%. Next slide, please. So how does the district fare in comparison to those averages? We're significantly lower, with a funding ratio of 5.8% for the end of our last fiscal year in 2020. We've taken steps as a district to address pension funding, including significant increases in funding that occurred in fiscal year 2020 and again this year, with our entire district contribution of $8.5 million being made early in July this year. Our plan actuaries have completed cash flow analysis for the plan, and we believe the trust has enough funding to cover any eligible retirement payments for the year. As we move forward, our intent is to stabilize the funding of the plan, and we're asking board members to consider a funding policy this evening that's been developed using best practice standards. Next slide, please. Your packet tonight includes a pension funding guide created by the Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA, Pension Funding Task Force in 2013. Although this information is a few years old, it still rings true today and provides a good overview of the best practices associated with funding retirement plans. Under these best practices, the GFOA recommends that in order to ensure sustainability, governments that provide defined benefit retirement plans should adopt a funding policy with a target funding ratio of 100%, which is also known as full funding. By fully funding our retirement plan, we will maintain intergenerational equity, which allows for the payment of the cost of employee benefits by the generation of taxpayers who receive our services. Building a strong funding policy will also help to ensure that promised benefits can be paid to our employees. Next slide, please. At June 30th, 2020, the district's pension liability was calculated to be $32.4 million. This liability is forward-looking and reflects a large decrease in liability as a result of over $18 million in lump sum pension payments made in relation to retirements and in-service requests effective June 30th, 2020. The pension liability will continue to change each year, with increases to the liability for interest expense and additional pension benefits earned by our employees. As employees retire and receive pension payments, the liability goes down. The liability at June 30th, 2020 is significantly lower than the $68.6 million liability at June 30th, 2019, due to the large amount of payments distributed at the end of the year in 2020. Next slide, please. The proposed funding policy you're considering tonight addresses plan funding in two steps. First, the initial years of the plan propose funding the retirement trust at a fixed amount to address the plan's current underfunded status. The funding level proposed is $8.5 million per year, which is consistent with the level of funding in the current fiscal year. Once the plan funded status is near 100%, the policy turns to a funding amount which is determined each year by the plan actuary. This funding plan provides for funding of retirement benefits earned by our employees each year as they are earned, which allows that intergenerational equity I mentioned earlier. I'd like to introduce at this point our plan actuary, Matt Larrabee with Milliman, who will provide you with a projection of the impact of this funding policy proposal. Next slide, please. Matt.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you to the members of the board. Happy New Year. It's good to have seen all of you earlier this fine evening. Lori, I think, summarized the tenets of the funding policy very well. And what this slide illustrates is the funded status of the program that we would project under the proposed funding policy of the $8.5 million a year until we get close to 100% funded status. So while we start at a very low position at the beginning of this year, under 6% funded, the $8.5 million funding level is robust enough that if the assets in the program were to earn, the invested assets were going to earn 6% per year, we would get very close to 100% funded at the end of the five-year projection here. At that point, we would pivot over, like Lori mentioned, under the policy to more of a traditional actuarially determined contribution. And that would be more of a maintenance style contribution. We would want to pay for the estimated economic cost to the district of the benefits being earned under the program in the year those benefits are earned. We would estimate that that's going to be in the neighborhood at the end of the projection period of about $1.75 million per year. So this is, I think, an opportunity, and I was very proud to be able to work with Lori and kind of review with the pension committee this proposal, because I think this will get us and the district to a very good place over a 5-year period. and it will be a very important commitment to the district's employees in terms of illustrating the district's commitment to the security and the security of their benefits while upholding that principle of intergenerational equity to the taxpayers that fund the district. And I think that was the only slide I had, Lori. So I think we'd be happy to take questions if you have any on this particular topic.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you both. Felicita.
Hi, Matt. Nice to see you again. Happy New Year. I'm wondering, I think what I'm getting stuck on is fiscal year and seeing these numbers. I'm just like, wait, it's halfway through one fiscal year, but it's the start of the calendar year. Help my brain, Matt, please.
Appropriate. It's a nerdy question, and you found the right person to field nerdy questions. So what you're looking at here is we always measure, even though things change and contributions are made, we're always going to measure things at a single date, a single point in time, and that's typically the fiscal year end. So what this pictograph is showing is where things stood, like the bar on the left, which is really low. That's how the assets compared to the liabilities as of June 30, 2020, the most recent fiscal year end close for the district. And so that's what we have moving left to right here. Is the $8.5 million for this year has already been contributed in this model. $8.5 million would be contributed in each of the subsequent 4 years. And under the projection, we'd be getting into the high 90% range by the time we get to that snapshot date, which would be fiscal year in 2025.
That tiny little bar above 2020, that represents what we have right now?
That represents about 6% funded status. So in terms of the promised benefits, because of a lot of the money that went out at the end of last year, we're at a very low funded status compared to the benefit promises we've made, but none of those benefits are not due in full immediately. So we've got the opportunity here to kind of rapidly escalate the funding, not just up to the recommended level of 100%, but also kind of get up above peers for other plans around the country.
That helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from my peers? I just have one question. Like, I know that we essentially, right, we establish what our plan is, and like that will stay, right? That we have this 5-year plan to contribute, and we base all of this planning based on a 6% return. When the market does better, does that just help us get like more fully funded faster? Or is like, are we outside of that? I'm sorry, am I freezing?
No, you're not.
Okay. Like, are we like completely separate from like, right? Like I have a 401k, so my 401k does, does better when the market does better. Does our type of retirement plan, do we have any like influenced by the market, or we're completely in control of our destiny?
Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first, Lori? All right, Lori, I think Lori's saying she wants me to go first. Great. So, the answer to your question is, yeah, we're certainly not in control of our own destiny in terms of the actual returns. Otherwise, if it's the same, I do the work for Oregon PERS, and if the PERS board was allowed to vote on what their actual returns would be, I'd give them different advice than I do. So, the majority of the increase, because we're starting from such a low spot and it's a relatively short period of time for this policy, the majority of the increase in that projection is from the contributions. It's not from earnings. Say earnings didn't come through for us, and instead of earning 6% a year, we actually just literally earned nothing. We didn't gain money. We didn't lose money. We would still be above 80% funded status at the end of those 5 years in my projections. On the other hand, say the markets do better than the 6%, which I think is a reasonably conservative assumption over the long term. Say instead the markets earn 12% rather than 6% for several years. What that would do is that would just push us up to 100% a little bit more quickly. Rather than being in the high 90% range after 5 years, we might be in the low 3-figure range. And whenever we get to that point or we're close to it, that's when the policy pivots and we go to more of that maintenance state in terms of the contribution levels.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question. I'll give my colleagues one more chance to ask any questions or comments. And Yes, Heidi, please.
I will just say I'm paying full attention, and I thank you and Lori for all of this work. I've learned a lot about pensions and actuarial equivalents this year. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Heidi.
And thank you for sticking through it with us this late in our meeting. We do appreciate that.
Oh, it worked out well for me. I had dinner brought to my office, so it was awesome.
But he didn't bring dinner to my office, so I'm not sure what happened there.
All right, well, great. Is there a motion from any of my colleagues?
Yes, this is Tia. I move the Board of Directors approve Resolution 2021-06, amending DCP 6 to include Section DCP 6.08, Retirement Funding Plan.
This is Wendy, and I second.
Thank you. Motion has a second. Jessica, will you please take the vote?
Felicitas Monteblanco,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer-Prick.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you all so much for this super, super important work. It's actually really also exciting to see that in 5 years we'll be in really good shape. So thank you all. That is our final agenda item this evening. Doug, before we close our meeting, is there anything else?
No, we're all good. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you everyone so much for hanging in with us. I know this is a long one, but so much important work and topics. It's good to see you all. Happy New Year.
Good night.
We will see you next month.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Doug.
Bye.